Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Golden Astrologer Podcast. This is Deb McBride, and I'm recording this from lovely Escazú, Costa Rica, on the 26th of May, a Sunday, the last Sunday of May in the year 2024. Pretty unbelievable, the last Sunday of May, because next week we start June. And I want you to know that I am starting my alchemy membership, and if you're interested in joining, you can contact me. I've been posting a lot about it on Instagram. I've mentioned it here on my podcast. It's a monthly membership, so if you're interested, contact me and I'll tell you all about it. I also put some of it up on my website. And if you go to the Astrologer's Thoughts page, you will read about it. And you can contact me, info@goldenastrologer.com or deb@debmcbride.com. And if you write to me, I will write back to you and give you all the details. You can ask questions, etc. So, lots to talk about. First of all, we had that lovely full moon the other night, and it was accompanied by the Venus-Jupiter conjunction, and Jupiter being the ruler of the full moon, and it was all around a very pleasant time. And then there was yesterday where Mars was at the eclipse point, and I definitely felt that. Yeah, huh? It was all things Mars in my world anyway. You know, I got aggravated. I got a stupid situation that got me really annoyed because it was just stupid. So there was that. And then I had to get some repair work done in the main bathroom in my house because, and it's not my house, it's where I live. It's my, somebody else owns it. Giselle owns it. And, it was work that should have been done 15 years ago. So it was, drilling and opening the wall in the bathroom and replacing the fixtures and the pipelines and the da-da-da. So it was done yesterday and today. And, of course, that makes your bathroom full of powder and debris and stuff. So... and then tomorrow there's going to be some more. It's an ongoing thing, tomorrow gets sealed up, then the tiles come and those kinds of things. So, yeah, so demolition, that's a Mars thing, demolition. So for sure there was some Mars action in my little world. But we are in a new era here, sort of, with Jupiter entering Gemini yesterday at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time, 5:15 p.m. my time. And this is going to be for a year, folks. So welcome Jupiter into Gemini. And so this is exciting. Jupiter being the planet of abundance and expansion and knowledge and faith and all things belief-oriented and big. Jupiter's a big planet with a big job. And, when we deal with Jupiter, we're dealing with an area of our life that needs to expand and, open. And maybe your heart needs to open. Maybe your mind needs to open. And certainly when Jupiter's in Gemini, we're being asked to open our minds. And this is, in obviously the Gemini portion of your astrological chart. If you are a Gemini sun or a Gemini moon like me, you are going to receive this to a very important part of your chart, or maybe you're a Gemini ascendant. This is going to give you expansion in some very important areas of your life. And the experience of Jupiter coming to Gemini, well, it's going to be it's a whole year. And Jupiter hasn't been there in 12 years. So we're looking at like about 2012 or so, the last time Jupiter was in Gemini. And so you want to pay attention and look back to what was going on in your life in 2012, 2013, because it went in about this time of year, maybe in June or so, 2012, and then it stayed for a year. So where did you expand? Where did you start to expand your knowledge, maybe some of your skills, your capabilities, your education? So how did that happen for you? And it was certainly a powerful thing for me because that's when I made the formal contribution the part of the base work set in my new vision system. So that's when we put it all together in actually the end of June in 2012. Even though I had been involved with it since 2009, delays for lots of reasons. If you know me, you know why. And it was a profound experience for me to have our work, mine and John's work, in this system, and it has been there ever since. So it was about information, and so now I'm at another expansive point with that system. And so what we do with Jupiter and Gemini is, where do you want to educate yourself? Where do you want more information? Where are you curious? Gemini is always a curious sign, and Jupiter expands that curiosity. So what is it about your life that wants that curiosity and is relishing some education and some new experiences in the realm of learning and information and communication? Where can you improve upon your communication? I think everybody can improve upon their communication, and Jupiter gives us the faith in knowing that we are capable of doing that, and that we are absolutely encouraged to do that in this year ahead. And that Jupiter is our friend. Jupiter is going to make it safe for you to communicate, hopefully in a very kind and clear manner. You don't want to communicate in a way that's going to offend people, obviously, but you want to listen carefully to your words. Think about what you want to say before you say it. Learn more about your style of communication and where you might be more clear. Just become more aware. Jupiter opens us up to see things. So you can actually really, practice expressing yourself in a deeper, greater way. Because sure, where couldn't we all benefit? Maybe in our relationships with people that we're communicating with, especially our intimate one-to-one personal relationships, if we can be more expressive in a very kind and clear way and expect that it's going to gain positive reaction from our partner, then sure, that could be something that Jupiter can help you with and help you expand. So that's really a very good place to use this energy. It's also good for research. Sure, Jupiter loves opening a book and opening their mind when they open that book and learning more about a particular topic and digging deep into it and really taking the next step in, like, educating yourself about maybe a particular thing that you've always wanted to learn, maybe getting another degree, something. It's also great for learning about new things in your neighborhood. It's also good for communication with your siblings. It's also really good for having a better relationship with your siblings and for gaining, just gaining more knowledge about them, who they are, learning about who they are at a deep level. Jupiter can help you do that in Gemini. And just being very aware of your relationships with your siblings, if you have siblings, or people who you consider to be your sibling. You may have friends, oh, she's like a sister to me. Sure, that could very well be. And that could really be some relationship that could benefit greatly from from having Jupiter in Gemini and having your attention on your friends who you consider to be almost like siblings. So this is a very interesting and expansive, wonderful transit of Jupiter. Jupiter is going to bring good things there. It's going to bring things that are optimistic and fresh and powerful in a certain way. Now, Jupiter in this transit of Gemini is going to have some challenges to Saturn. They're not going to be for a while. There's going to be one in August. There's going to be one in December. And then by the time Jupiter finishes its transit of Gemini, it will go into Cancer and it will challenge Saturn, which will be in Aries at that point. But that's not for a long time. That's not till Jupiter changes signs again, and it goes into its place of exaltation, which is Cancer. So let's just stay with Gemini for the moment and know that Jupiter's placement there will eventually challenge Saturn in a square from Gemini to Pisces, where Saturn is. Now, that is an interesting dynamic because remember, turn back the pages of your calendar and remember 2020, oh good old 2020, when Jupiter and Saturn were very near to each other for most of the year, but they made their exact conjunction at the beginning of Aquarius in December 20th of 2020. And you'll remember that things shifted and changed, and there was a big Capricorn year. We had that COVID cluster in Capricorn with Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto. And Saturn stepped out, went into Aquarius, went back into Capricorn, and was hovering around Jupiter, but they made their exactitude in Aquarius, which is very interesting because that's where Pluto is now. Of course, Pluto's a little past that point, but, as Pluto transits over that spot of 0 Aquarius, we're going to have that square between Jupiter and Saturn, but that's in August. And more on that in August. I may refer to it, but it's going to be in August. So I'm very curious about what that brings. Now, the other thing is that Jupiter being in Gemini and Pluto being in Aquarius is a very positive experience. And this is a lot of power and energy. Now, again, back to good old 2020, you'll recall that Jupiter and Pluto were conjunct 3 times in 2020. And that happened exactly. The 2 planets met exactly. The first one was about April 4th or so, 2020. I'll never forget that one because if you listened to me back then, you'll know I did a big meditation in our big garden here. And Giselle, my landlady and friend, came out of the meditation and screamed because there was a tarantula at her knee. They were all sitting on the grass. That was a moment. So go back to April of 2020 if you want to hear about that one. Go to that podcast, which I think you can still do. Anyway, Jupiter and Pluto met 3 times in 2020. And that's a very powerful conjunction. That's a very large, abundant conjunction. It's about the bigness of transformation and turning the light on in the closet and expanding on a greater level, taking your life and wherever the Capricorn area was of your chart, to a bigger next stage of your life. The birds, as you can hear, are still very active, even though nightfall has fallen and it's dark outside, but the birds are still squawking. So this experience of Jupiter and Pluto in Capricorn was very deep. And, you can consider it to be the big news of that day, of those days. You can consider it to be the big information that we all lived under and the big story that was going on in the world, the global story that was happening at that time. And so now, Jupiter is at the very early stages of Gemini, and Pluto is at the very early stages of Aquarius, both air signs. And this arrangement is a trine. So we're going to have a very nice trine of Jupiter to Pluto. And I think this is really going to be the only time this happens because Jupiter's not coming back to this degree of Gemini. So that's going to be next Sunday when we next meet. And that's going to be 8:13 p.m. Eastern Time. Jupiter in Gemini will trine Pluto in Aquarius. But for all intents and purposes, it's already happening. And it's going to be this build-up this week. Now, they met in a conjunction back in 2020. Like I said, the bigness of all of that and that story and everything. And, the big story, the big news, the big experience the big transformation of our world. And so when Jupiter now trines Pluto, this is one of the first contacts. There was a square, there was a sextile a few years ago, and then there was a square when Jupiter was in Taurus, maybe very briefly, when Jupiter was in early Taurus. But now this is very profound. Now we're having the first soft aspect, the first trine, the first third of air sign to air sign. And Jupiter is getting this wonderful trine, giving this wonderful trine to Pluto. And Pluto is in Aquarius and receiving this from Jupiter for the first time. So this is a big aspect and a big deal, because Pluto is all about transformation, and it's in this new place in the zodiac that it only tiptoed into last year. And then it really is only receiving Jupiter in this very powerful, profound trine this one time. But there's a lot of information here. So there's a lot of questions, in this Jupiterian time with Jupiter trining Pluto and then eventually going to Saturn. There's a lot of information. Where have you been since 2020? What's happening for you? Where was the story for you in 2020? What was going on? I mean, there was one common collective unconscious story, and then there was our individual personal stories. And so that personal story has some relevance to what we're going to experience this week, and Jupiter trining Pluto. It's very good. Now, Jupiter is, like I just said, expansive, knowledge-oriented, faith-oriented, positive, optimistic, big, abundant. Pluto being about transformation, this is an easier aspect than the conjunction was 4 years ago. Conjunctions they're not really hard aspects. They're the most powerful, potent aspects. When two planets come together, and they come together 3 times, well, yeah, that's going to speak volumes to us about, finding our voice, finding a new path. Remember what I talked about back then? The light on in the closet, finding your abundance, transforming. What's next for you? Everybody sort of found a what's next for me in that realm. Everybody's life changed. There were things about it then that have never been the same. And so, how are you doing with all of that? How are you doing with all of what happened in 2020 and the decisions that you made during 2020? And the decisions you made do really resonate to this Jupiter trine Pluto. It could very well be that some changes that you put into place at that time are now bearing fruit. And that's certainly something that could happen when I make a decision to change my life. I made a decision to do this. And they're sort of coming back to you to remind you of what you decided back then, and how is that working for you? And is it working for you? And if it's not working for you, then it's time to make the adjustments, right? And so Jupiter is also trining the spot where it met with Saturn, which is where Pluto is, in early Aquarius. So this is a little bit of a rerun of 2020, a little bit of a visit to that, a revisit of those things. Not in the same global sense, by no means. This is a trine, okay? This is a thoughtful visitation, okay? It's not going to be, oh my God, we're living that all over again. Not by any stretch of the imagination. This is just, what decisions did you make as a result of what was going on? What did you change in your life? How did you do things? Did you move from where you were living? What did you do? Change jobs, work from home, all those things. And so how is that working for you now? And are you happy with it? And you may find that you're really satisfied with it because we've got this nice trine happening. Now, the interesting thing is that tomorrow the moon is going into Aquarius, and that is going to be at 4:45 p.m. Eastern Time. And the moon is going into Aquarius, and then immediately, like 45 minutes later, it's going to trine Jupiter, right? So what does that tell us? That means that the moon is now already going to trigger this whole situation between Jupiter and Pluto, because it will trine Jupiter at 5:30, and then at 8:10 p.m. it will conjunct Pluto. So after those moments in the afternoon, in this region of the world, or that's the Eastern time zone, those aspects are going to be triggered by the moon. And that's something to pay attention to, because the moon comes along very swiftly and easily and shifts things just by shifting our awareness, and we're feeling into things, and we're seeing how this is really affecting us and what the real information is. And as Jupiter and Pluto are revving up for this exact trine next Sunday, we're going to get a taste of it tomorrow, Monday. So I think that's a good thing. This is not bad. This is actually all very good. It's all very good. And it's kind of exciting, I think. It's positive. Well, air signs like me like this stuff, of course, because I'm getting all this nice energy in my signs. So that's like the big Jupiter and Gemini information for this week. And we're going to watch as Jupiter expands those Gemini areas of our lives. Everything I mentioned earlier. In the meantime, our friend Mercury is busy this week, because Mercury is spending his last week in Taurus. I know, it feels like he just went into Taurus. He just slipped into Taurus a couple of weeks ago, and he zipped through after spending so many weeks in Aries. And he is now in his last moments. Yeah, he went in on the 15th of May. So really, this is the last week. It's only going to be a little over 2 weeks in Taurus for Mercury, because next Monday, the 3rd, he's going into Gemini in the wee hours of the morning, Eastern time zone. So what's going to happen with Mercury? Well, the obvious thing is that Mercury is going to conjunct that spot at the end of Taurus where Uranus and Jupiter have met. And this is the last conjunction of the inner planets for a long, long time. Mars will get there, not for a while, and we'll see if the flavor of Jupiter-Uranus remains as Mars gets there. But Mars right now is still hovering around that eclipse point, okay? So we have Mercury conjunct Uranus this week on Thursday the 30th in the Pacific time zone at 10:54 p.m., being the 31st in the Eastern time zone at 1:54 a.m. So that means if you live in Europe, if you live in that region of the world, or you're living in Australia or South Africa or something, you're going to get it on Friday the 31st. Your Friday the 31st. Okay? So this is Mercury coming to Uranus. Now, Mercury coming to Uranus is always exciting, because Mercury gives us new information and surprising information and new ideas and phone calls from out of the blue and opportunities. Now, Mercury is ruler of Gemini, and that's where Jupiter is now. So the ruler of where Jupiter has just entered is going to be heated up this week as it meets with Uranus and really touches that point where Jupiter and Uranus were back in April. So it hits that famous point between Thursday and Friday. And so now more information is coming to us about this conjunction that we have, Jupiter-Uranus, and we may have a completely different spin on it because Jupiter has moved along into the next sign, but it is the sign that Mercury rules. So this is all still very connected, isn't it? So I expect some information, new ideas, really sparkling things that happen for us that can be really beneficial. And I think this is really good. I think that we've got some really good aspects this week. Mercury is then going to finish up its tour of duty in Taurus when it goes into sextile with Neptune next Sunday, very late, 11:57 p.m. Eastern Time. And that's right before it enters the sign of Gemini a couple of hours later. And so Mercury meets with big planets. It meets with the outer planets this week. First, in a conjunction with Uranus, and then eventually this nice sextile with Neptune. So I do expect us to be integrating some new information. This is an exciting week. It's lots of info flying around, new ideas. Keep going. Don't give up. if you're working on some new ideas, now is the time to really nurture them. This is a really good time for thinking and mulling over and weighing out the benefits of some new ideas that you have. How far can they go? What can you do with them? Let's take them someplace exciting. Let's like work with them until we have an aha moment, an epiphany. So that's really where you want to take that Jupiter-Uranus energy, to epiphany status, okay? So work with whatever, if you got a little puzzle you're dealing with your projects, your creative things, work with it. Keep it going this week. Push it a little harder, just so that you can perhaps get that epiphany by the end of the week. That would be really amazing, right? Mars, our friend Mars, that I said is still hovering around the eclipse point, meets with Chiron on Wednesday the 29th. That's 1:08 p.m. Eastern Time. Yeah, so he's still triggering a lot of what the eclipse brought us. And he's giving us that extra vitamin shot of what we need to process from the eclipse. And remember, Chiron was a key component of the eclipse, because the eclipse happened right with Chiron and Mercury. So when we get this extra dose of Chiron energy, Mars may trigger some of the wounded things that we were feeling at that time. Yes, it's reached the eclipse point. Yes, Chiron is no longer at the eclipse point. It's moved along a little bit. It's not very far along, because Chiron moves pretty slowly. But it's like 3 degrees away from where it was. So Mars is now past the actual eclipse point and is now moving towards Chiron. So Mars Chiron can be very astute healing. It's in Mars's sign after all. It can be very strong, like, I'm going to go to a homeopath for the first time, or I'm going to do something really healing for myself and the things I discovered about myself during the eclipses. I recommend that if you are doing some healing work on yourself, really take a look at, some of your past emotional wounds, things about your independence, your opinion, the very Aries parts of your life. I've said before that Chiron in Aries is about the experience of like having your opinion and not being wounded, or allowing yourself to be wounded by what you feel is the right direction or opinion or modality or action for you. Because in similar ways to, the South Node in Libra, that Libra Aries axis, that North Node where it's still in Aries and it's close to Chiron and Mars has been over that North Node. And it gives us the reminder about not people pleasing. Please yourself first. Yes, you work with others, you balance the way you need to be with yourself and someone else. But remember, it's for me, for you, and for us. And it's about rising together. It's not about solely all about me or all about you, which is that Aries Libra axis. You want to balance what is necessary for yourself first, and then include the other person, and then together. But, I'm not telling you to be selfish. I'm telling you to consider yourself first. Remember, put your oxygen mask on first before you tend to your children or anyone else that needs your assistance. Because without you breathing properly, you're not going to be able to help anybody else. So you've got to align yourself properly and get yourself to a place where you really feel like you are steady and can move forward with confidence, and you are happy with your circumstances where you've put yourself, and not doing it to please somebody else. Okay? You've got to be happy with it first. Because if you're just doing it for them, that's not going to work. It's not in alignment. It's not going to work. So remember yourself first, in that kind way, and take care of yourself. Treat yourself with kindness, and then you attend to the needs of others. If you are feeling this Mars Chiron, I encourage you, if it feels like wounds are being triggered and that you need some support, I encourage you to reach out to someone who can support you. And I am one of those people. If you'd like to talk to me in astrological sense, or, in the mentoring space, you can reach out to me. And it's going to be pretty quick. It'll go past that on Wednesday, and then we're going to move into more of this positive energy around Mercury and Uranus, and then Jupiter and Pluto, and then Mercury and Neptune. And so this is, I think, generally a positive week. We are going to have a little Mercury with Saturn tomorrow, Mercury sextile Saturn. So it's good. It's lots of positive energy with Mercury. Mercury has a lot to say. Ruling Jupiter, very good. It's very good that Jupiter is getting its rulership right now, like from a planet that's very busy and has a lot to do this week and is going to be touching other planets. So all very good for processing information, all very good for taking the next step, for like recognizing where you've come in these last 4 years and where you're going. And so we don't have Mercury retrograde for a long time yet, for a few months. We won't have any eclipses for a few months, so we're moving forward. Pluto's retrograde and is the only one that's retrograde right now. We've got a while before Saturn and Neptune go, and they're going to go very close to one another because they're both in Pisces. So, they're hovering around one another. But right now, we're moving forward. We've got lots of good energy, lots of spice, lots of fun, lots of wittiness, lots of creativity this week, so use it. And then we'll have another planet in Gemini next week. So there's going to be lots of swinging Gemini energy coming up. And if you'd like to have a session with me, you can contact me directly, info@thegoldenastrologer.com, deb@debmcbride.com, or go right ahead and book an appointment. Book online at my website, thegoldenastrologer.com. I've been on Instagram, The Golden Astrologer. You can work with me as a mentor, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. And you can also work with me to work on Reiki. Now, my 5th dimension Lemurian Reiki is really special, and I highly recommend it. If you've never had a session with me in that, it can be very powerful. It can shift things for you. I've been working with people, and it's been going really well. I've had amazing sessions with people, revealing wonderful things for them. So, I highly recommend it. It's a beautiful experience. It's a very positive, it's a silent experience for the most part. And then I tell you what I've seen. But you can also study with me and learn this method yourself. And it's a wonderful tool to have. It really has helped me tremendously and some of the people around me. Once you learn it, you get certified, you can teach. So I highly recommend that. And it's on my website, or you can talk to me about that as well. Thank you so much for listening. Happy Jupiter and Gemini. Enjoy this week ahead. I think with the exception of Mars and Chiron throwing maybe a little bit of a twist in it, I think we're going to be having some really good energy this week. So enjoy it. See you on the internet. Thank you so much for listening. Gratitude to all.